fellow patriots of Bellevue. This is Dion Thompson with Saleem and Dion, and we're out here today in the beautiful area of Bellevue, and we're going to be asking people if basically someone will end a friendship over a MAGA hat. And as you can see behind me, I'm standing behind, well, not behind, and standing in front of all of these wonderful American flags. I'm surprised they haven't taken them down and put up colorful ones yet. But regardless, we're going to be asking people today how they think about that, how they think about ending friendships over a political belief, which is inherently stupid to do. So with that, also, please check us out on Patreon, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. All the links are going to be down below, so make sure you check us out and stay classy, Bellevue. All right, my name is Saleem Juman. I'm standing here with
Jacob Childers.
Jacob. It's a pleasure to meet you. So we're asking people here today what they think about the MAGA hat.
It's pretty shitty.
Okay.
Yeah, like the design is distasteful. What it stands for is pretty awful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we all know that Donald Trump's kind of a garbage person. And the people who support him, they tend to support like racist values. They don't like the gays very much, stuff like that. Yeah, it's just a hat that represents, a bunch of hate.
How exactly does it represent hate, though? I mean, there's black conservatives, there's gay conservatives, there's women for Trump. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of people. Do you think they all have internalized misogyny and internalized racism?
Not necessarily. Like you said, there's women for Trump and there's gays for Trump, but Trump isn't for gays. Like someone who supports gay people wouldn't pass a legislature that bans LGBT people from the army, like trans people from the army.
Well, he didn't ban LGBT. Let's clarify that he didn't, ban LGBT people. He banned trans people specifically, which is actually something I disagree with.
It's the T in LGBT.
Sure, but not gay and lesbian. So we just want to make sure we clarify for the audience and stuff like that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So,
also, like his vice president is an advocate for conversion therapy.
Is he though? I've heard that debunked a few times. I'm not sure. Like, is there proof that Mike Pence is for conversion therapy though?
I mean, he's talked about it in interviews.
He has.
There could be something that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
But
because I want to go check that out because I don't agree with conversion therapy. So yeah.
Like the suicide rate of gays who go through conversion therapy
is very, very high.
It's very high.
Yeah.
And like Trump's banning Muslims, and he's currently attacking representatives.
Well, let's talk about that Muslim ban. It wasn't necessarily a Muslim ban. It was a ban on certain countries, and not all Islamic countries were on the list. For instance, we should have banned Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia funds, I think, 85 or 90% of world terrorism worldwide. So that's a bit of a problem. But I want to clarify that ban also came from the Obama administration as well. It was written under the Obama administration and simply implemented under the Trump administration. And thirdly, ISIS actually stated numerous times they were going to try and sneak their people in through the refugee crisis, both in Europe and here. And I don't know if you know what's happening at the border, but what tends to happen is a lot of people fly from places like Angola, people fly from the Middle East, and then they go through, Guatemala, Honduras, and they come up to the southern border and, kind of fade in with the refugees from those countries. So I think that's part of why he implemented it.
And also another little detail is that I found out that the three highest countries the three highest Muslim populated countries in the world, India, Pakistan, and Indonesia are not on the list. And then also a country that I thought was weird that's on the list is North Korea.
I guess we're buddies now. Okay, so next question though. Would you unfriend somebody both in real life and on social media for wearing a MAGA hat?
No.
Okay.
I think it is important to keep a conversation with the difference of opinions. Now, I will unfriend people for
being racist douchebags.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
But I have a couple friends. So I'm from Eastern Washington. It's very conservative. I have quite a few friends who voted for Donald Trump and wear a MAGA hat. I have some friends with Confederate flags on their trucks, which is super cool. I love that. Yeah. But that doesn't mean I'm going to unfriend them. I have friends that we have conversations about that, and I try and let them know why I disagree with them.
That's a good thing. Thank God.
So if you're from Eastern Washington, what would you consider yourself politically?
Super leftist. Super leftist.
So, like, to the left of liberal.
Yeah, I mean,
Can we clarify, like, socialist or communist, though? Or just, like, left on cultural and political values?
more socialist, left on cultural political values.
Okay.
Mostly like not liberal because liberalism is inherently capitalist and doesn't support Medicare for all, like the concept, whereas leftism does.
Yeah.
So that's the main distinction.
Can I ask you, if you identify as a leftist, how do you feel about groups like Antifa?
I mean, it's a very nuanced question. I don't know if I have a very good answer to it.
Well, we want to hear your opinion, because here's what I'm saying is, you have a lot of news outlets that were hailing Antifa as heroes. There's people that have excused their bad behavior for years and years. And one thing we like to say on the right, I mean, I think you probably gathered we're conservatives. You seem like a smart guy. So, something that I've always said is that the right will completely disavow its extremists. So white nationalists, people like, James Allsup and things like that have been kicked out of GOP. And you're from Eastern Washington, you might know who that is. He's been kicked out of GOP conventions. So the right actually disavows its extremists, but the left hails them as heroes. And that's something that's bugged me for a long time. And I want to preface this point by saying Antifa has actually been hunting us for the last 7 months as fascist white supremacists. They doxed my liberal Democrat parents. They have assaulted us in the streets. They have thrown shit at us. Bottles with feces and things like that at us.
The guy from the John Brown Gun Club was just throwing Molotovs at the ICE facility.
Right, we actually know him personally from protests.
Yeah.
He didn't like us. There was an Antifa member. We actually spoke here at UW, and an Antifa member tried to chain the doors on us. I feel kind of bad. I have this kind of negative opinion on people who identify as leftists because I've been dealing with groups like Antifa. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you feel about that kind of shit?
Well, similarly, I have a negative view of people who identify as conservatives because they like to call me a faggot. They like to attack people who are black and brown. They like to attack people who are gay. Actually, a counter question to you. You say you on the right like to disavow extremists, but hasn't your president refused to disavow white nationalism?
That's not actually true. He disavowed it in the infamous Charlottesville speech, the one where people were saying there's very fine people on both sides. That's not actually the transcript. I actually had the article of what he actually said, and he said there were both bad people and good people on both sides. I don't consider Antifa good people, just like I don't consider the neo-Nazis they claim to fight good people. If Antifa only concentrated on neo-Nazis, if they only punched Nazis like Richard Spencer in the face, I'm a free speech advocate, so I definitely want to stand for freedom of speech, but I have a very hard time standing for people like Richard Spencer because he's a douchebag. But at the same time, he actually didn't say that. And what really bugs me about left-wing media in particular is the amount of hoaxes that have been disproved and things that they've said, especially about Donald Trump. Why are we consistently talking about the man's tweets when there's policy we should be debating? So that's all out there. But if there's any extremists or people that believe that people of color are not the same as whites, or people that believe that women should not have equality, or people that believe that gay people shouldn't have rights, I completely disavow them. Disavow all forms of homophobia, racism, sexism, transphobia. As a matter of fact, we actually went to the Pride March, and we were standing for gay conservatives who are afraid to march in the march because Antifa stated that they would steal MAGA hats and beat up Republicans, even if they were gay. So, yeah.
Thank you for supporting the gays and black and brown people.
We all should.
I'm Josie.
Josie, nice to meet you. So, my question for you today is, what do you think of the Make America Great Again hat?
Make America Great Again app.
No, the hat.
Oh my gosh!
If there was an app, I'd download
it. Like, I have never. My bad. Sorry.
No, you're good.
The Make America Great Again hat. Let's see. It's definitely a brand. I think it's pretty effective given how many people wear it, and it's kind of become a symbol, I feel like. So I personally am a liberal, so I don't agree with it, but I find the use of it to be very effective. it's kind of weird whenever you see a red hat. You're like, wait, does that have it on there? Like, but
that's actually so funny. Whenever I see someone wearing like a red hat of that color, I'm like.
don't.
So, why do you disagree with the Make America Great Again hat? Like, is it something that you disagree with personally? Is it like a policy? Is it Trump himself?
I personally disagree with Trump himself, but the reason I disagree with Make America Great Again is that it doesn't really specify a time, but as I see it, we've been improving, like, more racial equality, more gender equality. So when you say Make America Great Again, that refers to some more conservative views of going back to how it was. And the issue is that how it was a lot more racist, a lot more homophobic, a lot more sexist, a lot more misogynistic. And so Make America Great Again implies that it was better before, where I think that progression has actually made it better now. And I think that we're living in the best time that we could be right now. And so trying to change it back to how it was, especially since just a couple of days ago Trump tweeted such racist things about the House. Or not the House, but the four women in the House.
The squad.
Yeah, the squad. And so I think that says a lot about when he says "Make America Great Again." I think that he means, and like Nancy Pelosi said, "Make America White Again."
Sure. So with respect to the slogan itself, so Ronald Reagan used it. I think Bill Clinton said it at some point. But some people will respond to what you said as well. It's not about like the year or time period. It's about the mindset. Like, for example, back in the 80s, the people were rich. I mean, comparatively to now, in terms of, like economic status. Like, everybody was far wealthier. And then, there was, of course, the crash in the late 80s. And then, and so like stuff like that. It's not like referring to like racial inequality or Jim Crow or stuff like that. So how would you respond to that?
I would say that if you're going to say Make America Great Again and reverting back to how it was, then with those riches, you're going to get those ideals. And with like such stigma between class, between race, I think that having that ideal that if we go back to how it was, then everybody's going to be rich, or everybody's going to be wealthy. People are unwealthy because there is ridiculous, like, sorry, not going to try to get too political, but healthcare, like there are people who are, I believe it's $100 or $400 from being homeless. And I think
a paycheck away from being homeless, basically.
So I think that has to do with our infrastructure, and I don't think that going back to how it was or making America great again, I think that you're going to need to make some policy reforms and try and get everybody to an equal platform.
To an evil platform?
To an evil platform. I mean, that's what we have right now.
Dun, dun, dun. So how would you respond to those people that say, well, what about the job numbers? They're the lowest it's ever has been. More people are employed. More women are employed. The black unemployment rate is the lowest it's ever has been. How would you respond to those people? If it's even true.
I don't doubt that it's true. I would say that it is left over from Obama. I know that Trump enjoys taking credit for those things, but from what I've seen from him, I don't really think that what he's done in giving tax breaks to oil companies and is really what's helping unemployment, besides the fact that he is opening up more like fossil fuels like coal mining and such. So that actually has provided jobs, but I don't know if I can say that that's worth it. And I do come from like a higher economics like background, and so I would say that in that case, he has. I don't know if it's really beneficial for the long term, and most of the economic benefit is left over from Obama, as there is the stock market has been crashing a lot lately. I don't know if you see CBS, but
yeah, I mean, it actually hit, what was it, 47 or 46 or 47 points the other day, the highest it's ever has been. And actually, I actually spoke with a really old conservative couple. They're like in their 70s, and they have stock, right? And they literally told me, like, because of what Trump has signed into policy, into law, that they've made tens of thousands of extra dollars from the stock market because of him. I mean, maybe he's not doing all bad. Maybe, I don't agree with Obama in certain points. I do agree with him at some points. I agree with Trump at some points and not. So it really kind of goes into a case-by-case basis, right? I mean, how do you respond to that?
I can understand how people would be happy with that, especially when it is around fossil fuels and that type of thing, because he's given companies major tax breaks. He's reemployed people. He pulled out of the Paris Agreement, and so there's been a lot of market there because we're kind of reverting a little bit, and so I think that it's the extra tens of thousands of dollars right now are not worth putting the future in jeopardy, and that's what these types of things are doing. And because of Trump's policies, I think that, like, as everybody knows who, follows science, is that we have less than 10 years. And so I don't think that the tens of thousands of dollars right now are worth ruining the environment later.
So you said less than 10 years. So that's something that Ocasio-Cortez says a lot. And even, Al Gore said 20 years ago that we had like 10 years, or is it 15? I think he said 15 years left 20 years ago, and then AOC is now saying 12 years or 10 years or whatever you said. So is it really that close to being the point of no return, or is there another way we can do it, or?
I think we've already passed the point of no return, and I'm not totally sure. I know we either have or we're close to that.
Okay.
But the issue is that the polar ice caps are melting and the coral is dying and such. But the biggest issue is what it's going to come back to do, because I know that right now it doesn't really affect us, but it gets back to humanity because the ecosystem is so fragile, and the fact that we're warming the planet. Like, the oceans provide most of the oxygen to the world, even though that they're lower providers per capita. There's just so much that's really what's providing a lot of the oxygen. And so the fact is that we're going to have to either surrender, which I doubt humanity will do, or we're going to have to innovate around it. Like, I don't know if you saw the Black Mirror episode with the bugs, and they had like these little electronic bugs, and they've actually invented those. There was a news article about it, to replace bees, because
I think I've seen something like that.
Yeah, and so it just shows how much damage we're doing to the ecosystem, and so I guess we're gonna have to replace it with robots or something. Like, I'm not totally sure. The issue is that you can't really replace food with robots. Granted, the issue is like really everything kind of is gonna come back to us, and I don't think that by saying, oh, it'll be a little longer, it's not gonna stop it. Even if it isn't in the next 10, 12 years, like, we're still heading towards it. It's not gonna go away just because we're like, oh, it's not in the near future. If it's later, then it's fine.
Cool. So my last question for you today is, would you unfriend someone because of a MAGA hat?
Both physically and real and on social media.
Yeah.
Let's see. I would ask them about it. I live in Seattle, so I can only imagine somebody doing it ironically. If they really did believe that and believe in what Trump says, I think I would, just because I'm a woman and what he says goes against me as a woman. Like, it's like, even though like the 10 years ago where he's like literally was bragging about sexually assaulting women, and then there's immigration, and there's that he's giving tax breaks for large companies, and like, so the issue is that if somebody, or at least for me, the issue is if somebody is wearing a MAGA hat, then they agree with Trump that we should make America great again, and likely agree with a lot of what he's saying, and the issue is just that goes so against my moral beliefs that if somebody believed that, then I would only have to believe that they also believe in the other things that he's saying, which go against me as a person.
Sure. So he's a brown Muslim, I'm a black guy. What do you think our political beliefs are? Do we lean more democratically or do we lean more conservatively? Because of what you know about us so far.
From what you said you disagree with Obama on some things, and that we live in Seattle, so I would assume anyways that you lean a little bit more towards blue, democratic, liberal, whatever. But I would say maybe more moderate.
Okay. Would you be surprised that I'm actually a Trump supporter? And I actually have the...
Put it on, Dion.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a really great conversation. I wear this all the time, and I don't agree with everything Trump says, right? I mean, the things he says on Twitter and on public, I'm like, why did you just say that? So, now, does this change your opinion on me and him? I mean, he wears a MAGA hat too.
Yes. What I don't understand is just with him literally making those racist remarks saying, go back to where you came from, and 3 out of 4 of the women were born here. Like,
thought maybe that he's inferring that they should be proud of being allowed to come here? That could be more to the point of what he's trying to say. Trump has never been one to not speak bluntly, and he says a lot of crass things, so perhaps when he was speaking to the squad, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, perhaps he was more inferring to the point that they should be proud of this country, because we conservatives feel that a lot of people on the left are not proud of this country. My parents are immigrants. I'll tell you, my parents are immigrants from Africa, in Tanzania specifically, and it is very, very rough there. Very, very tough, and we are very privileged to live in the United States.
So then can I ask you, what are your thoughts on Trump saying that he's going to shut down immigration and deport all the immigrants? Because that's been actually a major selling point for that. He's
never said he's going to deport.
He wants to deport.
He says get him out of this country. So I would assume.
Well,
he's talking about people who are illegal.
Yes.
Now, I want to say first and preface this by saying that I actually agree with the DACA program, because those children that came over illegally they shouldn't be held responsible for what their parents did. Now, a lot of people abuse the asylum process. Even Democrats are saying that these days. They're saying there's a crisis at the border. A lot of people abuse the asylum process. And people, if they come over and they cross that borderline illegally, they are illegal immigrants. They are not undocumented. I know that's the politically correct term, but that is incorrect. The objective term is illegal immigrant. And a lot of people abuse the asylum system by renting poor children from poor families in Mexico and Guatemala, and then they take them up here and they traffic them, they sell them, or they use them to tug on the heartstrings of our democratic brethren to get into the country, and that's wrong. And what happens when they rent these children is a lot of times these young girls and young boys, they get raped or they get murdered. There was a 10-year-old girl that was not related to the people she was with, and she was raped 20 different times by 20 different men. She had 20 different semen samples in here. That is wrong, and that is stuff that we need to call out, and we need to fight human trafficking. And to do that, we also need to be able to fight illegal immigration.
So let me kind of add on to that. So when I know exactly what you're talking about, is to say get them out of our country. So he's been misquoted several different times, and I can actually pull up the quote right now. I just have to look through my 100 articles. But he said about a year and a half ago, it's like, well, we got to get them out of our country. They're rapists, they're murderers. You probably have heard that a lot, right? Well, he was actually... Yeah.
I had a laugh at that one.
So he was actually talking about, what MS-13 is, right? I mean, he was literally talking about MS-13. A reporter asked him a question, and then the next thing you know is the news article reported on him saying the thing that everybody has heard.
Another thing that bugs me is left-wing media outlets. They misquote the president many, many times. They've misquoted his Charlottesville quotes. I mean, I have the actual transcript.
Didn't he say that there was...
find people on both sides?
Yes.
Well, that's part of the
what
quote
is
that he
the
said, but he also
context
disavowed,
behind that?
So he was disavowing groups like Antifa, who beat the shit out of people that they disagree with, and are no better than the neo-Nazis that they claim to fight. We've been assaulted by Antifa numerous times as so-called white supremacists. We're just free speech advocates. 2 colored guys, the POC and Muslims that they claim to defend, and they're attacking us because we happen to be conservative when we happen to be Trump supporters.
Apparently not enough social justice points.
So, can I actually ask you a question? You said you're Muslim, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about Trump banning immigrants from majorly Muslim countries? I believe it was 15.
Do you want to switch with me, D?
Sure.
Okay. So first, I want to state that that was not a Muslim ban. It was a ban on certain countries, and it was actually written under the Obama administration. Now, I know that's every conservative's go-to point. Well, Obama did it! No, that's not the point here. ISIS specifically stated, and a lot of other radical Muslim groups, you have to understand, it's not just ISIS that we're fighting against. It's groups like Al-Shabaab, which is in Angola and Nigeria. There are radical Islamic groups all over the world, all over northern, eastern, and western Africa, all over the Middle East. They're all over parts of Eastern Europe. They're everywhere. Islamic terrorism is a huge, huge deal. Now, I don't want to say that there's no such thing as Christian terrorism. There is. I mean, you look at the IRA. That's a perfect example. There is examples of other groups committing terrorism. Right-wing violence and white nationalists and neo-Nazis, they're also a problem. You look at groups like guys like Dylan Roof. Yeah, they are a problem, and we disavow groups like that. But Islamic terrorism is a huge, huge deal right now, and ISIS and these other groups like Al-Shabaab said they specifically would sneak their people in through the refugee crisis both in Europe and in the United States, and they have. So
it's the Trojan horse.
Then
Right.
what do you think about people, what do you think about that as an intimidation tactic? Do you think that since it's caused so much of a stir, do you think that this is intimidation, and do you think that it's working?
intimidation to the Islamic groups?
No, to the U.S., saying that they're going to sneak people in through the immigration programs and such. Do you think that that is used for intimidation, and do you think that it is effective?
Well, certainly, because the whole point is you could never know who's coming across the border, and I want to specifically speak to the point that we have a lot of people that are actually coming over from places like Angola and Western Africa and Northern Africa, and they're actually flying here, and they will fly into Brazil, and then they'll go all the way up across South and Central America. They'll come to the southern border, and they'll come in with Guatemalan and Honduran refugees. Now, obviously, people from Africa and the Middle East are going to look a little bit different, but I mean, there's also a lot of black people in places like Brazil. You aren't necessarily going to be able to tell. ISIS also trains their people to fit into those groups, right? So yes, it can be an intimidation tactic, and it could be terrifying to the citizens of the United States because you don't know who's coming in. Now, I mean, and that's another reason we need to handle illegal immigration and this problem, because we don't want our people to be afraid of legal immigrants. And that's the biggest disagreement the Dems and Republicans have right now is legal immigration is okay. That doesn't make me racist. That doesn't make me bigoted. I don't think it's okay for people to come over here illegally. My parents had to be sponsored. They had to pay a lot of money to come here. I'm very privileged to be in the United States. I look at documentaries by Vice. I look at things that are happening in the Middle East. I look at things that are happening in just all over the world, and I look at the things we have, the first world problems we deal with here. And that's one of the biggest reasons I hate leftist social justice crybabies, because they just piss me off. Instead of speaking out against things that are happening all over the world, they speak out against about pronouns and how they feel oppressed in classes because apparently time is sexist and racist. I'm not kidding. That's actually a thing. Time is apparently sexist and racist now. That's a ridiculous concept. If you're going to be for social justice and you're going to be for equality and speaking out about what needs to be right in the world, speak out about the problems that are truly going on. So that's how I feel about those things.
And you also spoke about the quote Muslim ban. So he actually forgot to say that the three highest Muslim populated countries in the world are Indonesia, Pakistan, and India.
Yeah.
And they're not even on the list.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say actually is Saudi Arabia should have been on that list, but it wasn't because we do a lot of business with them.
Saudi Arabia.
Well, and that's something that I would love to have a talk with the president about, because I do not support Saudi Arabia in any capacity. I mean, look at their human rights violations.
And the fact that they literally killed somebody, and we're just like, oh no, it's okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
85 to 90% of terrorism worldwide. And yes, the Jamal Khashoggi situation is something that I am really pissed off that nobody spoke about, because nobody on my side spoke up about it.
What makes me frustrated about the Jamal Khashoggi case is that there are hundreds of thousands of people dying, and it's the one person that everybody cares about. Like, there's so many other things
because he was
going
known.
on.
Yeah.
Sure. No, it's the one person is a story and thousands are a statistic, or something along that line. And I totally agree with you, actually, that there's large issues. And what I was trying to get to more when I was talking about the Muslim ban is that it was countries with majorly Muslim or large Muslim amounts of Muslim people.
Majority populations.
Yeah. And so just you as a Muslim with the ban, so do you not believe that he did it? Why do you think that he banned those countries?
Those countries, a lot of those countries on the list did have specific terror threats attached to them. That's also why North Korea was on the list but doesn't have a single Muslim there. That's a big part of it. And even me as a Muslim, I actually think Muslims need to speak out more against Islamic terrorism and more against trying to implement Sharia law in places in England, in like Luton. I know that there's a lot of people on the right, especially the farther right people, that are saying, the Swedish rape thing. And I don't know how true that is. I would love to, as a journalist, I'd love to go investigate that thing. I don't know for sure. I mean, there's people, competing stories and stuff like that. But I do think that when we're taking in refugees from Syria and we're taking in refugees from the Middle East, a lot of those people don't necessarily assimilate, and they don't want to assimilate.
That is actually a totally fair point. I know that it happened a lot in the EU, in Germany. We have friends there,
Yeah.
and they said that it's gotten a lot less safe because of just having people pour in and they don't get a chance to assimilate because the ratios get screwed up.
I'm sorry, what was your name one more time? Josie. So they may not necessarily want to assimilate, because you have to understand that a lot of men who are coming from that part of the world, and I know this because I've grown up in an Islamic background. Now, everybody I've grown up with is a westernized Muslim, right? So they're very different. But I've been to Syria, right? A lot of the culture there is very, very different. I mean, you want to talk patriarchy? I don't think there's a patriarchy in the United States. Over there, though, there is. There is a rape culture there. Women will be stoned. If you report a rape to the authorities, especially in villages in Pakistan, you will probably be stoned to death for the offense on your honor, for being raped. That's ridiculous. That is stuff that we need to be speaking out against. Rapists here in the United States are prosecuted, whether we disagree on statistics and things like that, but...
Okay. I actually kind of disagree with that, because I believe it's 1 out of 99 rapists are actually prosecuted, is what I've heard.
So there's actually competing statistics on that. So a big part of the problem is a lot of rapes aren't reported, so it's hard for people to get the statistics on that in the first place. And you have different groups that are saying, well, 40% of rape accusations are false, and then you have other people who are saying the original 2 to 10% statistic of rape accusations are false. But then you also have people farther to the left that'll say, nope, we're going to misquote that statistic and say it's only 2% of rape accusations are false. So we have a problem here. We have Title IX policies and stuff that are implemented in universities now, and what's kind of happening with those is the preponderance of evidence policy, where you get 51% instead of the 95% you would need in a criminal case, and you can't cross-examine your witness, you can't have a lawyer in the room, and if you are basically accused of sexual assault in a university, your life is over. You cannot defend yourself. There is really no need for evidence, and I have the stories to back that up. I mean, there was Emma Sulkowicz and the mattress girl, there's the case of Armin Premji, there's the case of Saifullah Khan over at Yale, there's the case of the recent, the Jane Doe situation at Columbia University, and now they're withholding that guy's degree, even though it's actually been proven that she was lying. These are wrong things. Now, of course, we have situations with Brock Turner, literal piece of shit. There was that situation with that fraternity that was drugging girls at their fraternity. I think he was a pretty high up member of his frat, and he got off with, I think, was it probation, or was it really light jail time? Now that is absolutely wrong, and I will tell you that right now. I think rapists should be castrated if it is proven beyond reasonable doubt. People have to be proven guilty before we punish them.
Sure. I agree with what you're saying. About what you're talking about is it's hard to actually get statistics.
Sure.
Because so many people don't report it.
Yeah.
What do you think that says socially about what we think about rape if people don't feel comfortable around their families, around their friends, around the people who supposedly care about them, or not supposedly care about them? But
so I think there is, even today, still a negative association with being a rape victim. I think that there is still a negative association and stigma attached to it, which is very unfortunate, because if you are a victim of a crime, you should feel completely able to report that and have the support from your family and friends and everything like that, and the universities and wherever you are. And I think those policies are changing a lot. I mean, if you look at the Me Too movement right now, especially with the Time's Up and Me Too movement.
But a lot of those things are about the rich white men, and a lot of those people are Republicans. And so
sure, there's also a lot of Democrats in that category too, though. I mean, Michael Avenatti, and his domestic violence stuff, Keith Ellison, neither of them was punished for it either.
And then
What? Oh, yeah, that's right. Stormy Daniels lied. Yeah.
I can't actually speak to that. I don't know a lot about that, so I'm not gonna speak to that. But and then also with Trump, he has several allegations against him.
Sure.
What do you think about that?
So again, I need to see proof.
Actually, I can talk about the most recent ones.
Okay. Do you want to switch?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the most recent allegation that happened against Trump, or that, the whole grocery store thing, well, that was actually completely fake. And I'll tell you this right now. Have you ever seen Law and Order, that show before?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Well, she actually took that story that she accused him with and copied it off of Law and Order.
Oh, you're talking about the columnist.
Yeah. I mean,
Sure.
what?
The thing is like, I do understand that if that one is fake, but what about the rest of them?
Sure.
Like, a lot of people said that with Cosby that they were lying, and it turned out that they weren't, and there was just a lot of women, and I think that there's kind of a similar case here.
With Kavanaugh, right? So Christine Ford was never proved to be lying, but 3 of his other accusers were proved to be lying. Julie Swetnick, and then there was a man, and there was one other one, and they were actually proved to be lying, and they're actually being prosecuted by the DOJ for lying to Congress.
Right.
No,
So
yeah.
when that happens, it fucks things up big time, because when you lie about rape, that's what catches people's eye, and then it casts a shadow of doubt on all the other accusations. So that's why we say we need objective proof in order to convict someone.
So without even the rape allegations about Brett Kavanaugh, he said multiple times that he did not sleep with anybody in college, but there was several yearbook quotes with slang about sleeping with people in college.
I will say that boys, having grown up a male, even before I lost my virginity, that's the kind of things we would say to try and impress our friends. I don't know exactly. I think you're referring to like the Devil's Triangle and stuff like that. We don't know. We can't simply cast doubt on somebody, no more than we can cast doubt on Christine Ford and her accusations. We don't know for sure. That's why it's so hard to prove with he said, she said allegations, because we don't know for sure, and people have to investigate that. That's another reason I have a big problem with Title IX, is because you have universities and their administrators investigating things, and universities are fucking stupid as shit. The police are probably a lot better and more equipped to actually investigate that kind of thing, but with Title IX, what's happening is you have people getting thrown out of school and their degrees withheld. There was a guy who slept with a woman, and he woke up the next day, they were both drunk, woke up the next day, threw his clothes on, ran to the Title IX office to report her. Why? Because she had reported someone to Title IX before, and he was worried for himself. I'm pretty sure they had consensual sex, but he was that afraid. So when they say it's a scary time for men, that's what they mean. They don't mean that men don't want to take responsibility for, making sure women are safe and making sure women feel comfortable, but it's more about there's certain things that are happening in the Title IX courts, and there's certain things that are happening where you can be accused on social media and your life can be destroyed without any objective proof. You can just be crushed in the court of public opinion. That's wrong. We need to be able to prove those things.
Yes. And to respond to your point about what about the accusations against Trump? Are you talking about the grab him by the pussy comment? Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, it was recorded. Yes, it happened. Yeah, I mean, yes, he said that, as in, when I say it happened. But there's no proof that he actually did something like that.
No, it just speaks a lot to his beliefs. Grab him by the pussy is definitely not something I really want to hear from my president
Sure.
as a woman.
Sure. I mean, you do realize, though, that almost every single male and female, I would have to say, has some kind of locker room talk. Now, let's just say hypothetically that you were going to run for president and you would win. And let's say you had your best friend who's like, oh yeah, I'm so wet or whatever, or something stupid that you said 35 years ago, right? Well, what if that was secretly recorded and then all of a sudden that your good friend released that? Well, then you would get the same exact comments.
And we're actually going to see a lot of that coming in the next 15 to 20 years, because we're the social media generation. So the people that are going to be running for politics, I guarantee you in the next 10 to 15, 20 years, it's going to be hilarious, because things like this are going to be coming out all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the biggest thing that I want you to walk away from this interview with is the right is and many moderate Democrats and moderate lefties are incredibly tired of the news constantly focusing on orange man bad, orange man racist, orange man sexist.
There's just so many things
Well,
to
when he
talk
says-
about.
but
Like
when
every
he
day
actually
it's a
says-
tweet.
When something actually pops up and it's actually racist, people are just. Tim Pool stated this, today. And it was a very good point. People are just going to be like, "Oh, well, they're saying orange man bad again. Okay, I don't care." He's actually going to. If he actually does say something like that, that's actually racist, people just aren't going to care. That's wrong. You know what I'm saying? So we can't be the boy that cried wolf. We have to actually focus on the important things.
The thing is I don't think that a lot of the things in the news are necessarily the boy who cried wolf. I think that there's just an abundance of things that like Trump keeps saying. Like I don't think that the tweets were faked, and I don't think that the people around him who have come and testified, like the Mueller report and such, I don't think that those people are necessarily lying. And so I don't know if it's really crying wolf. I think that we're just getting so many things that the news is just kind of getting hogged by it. Like even in while the 2016 elections were happening, they talked about how many millions of dollars of advertising Trump got from the news.
Yeah,
I don't doubt
it's
it.
all because they hated him. I'll tell you, mainstream GOP tried to stop Trump.
Yeah.
All the way up until he was actually picked as their candidate. They tried to stop him every step of the way. Mainstream GOP is not a fan of Trump. They are not. They are conservatives.
Yeah.
Conservatives are not about crass remarks and that kind of thing.
I mean, Donald Trump, now you're going to be like, what? Donald Trump kind of reminds me of President Lincoln. And the reason why he reminds me of him is because the Democrats didn't support President Lincoln when he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. The Republicans didn't even support him. His own party didn't even support him. Now, they supported him silently, say, oh yeah, well, we free the slaves, but we're not going to sign it because of, public relations kind of thing. Well, I feel it's almost the same type of context now. Like the Democrats hate him, his own party doesn't like him. He's doing all these things, whether you agree or not, and I kind of feel bad for the dude, to be honest, like just getting slandered every single day.
And I also want to have you look into something. I mean, you identify as a Democrat, right? So I highly advise checking out The Myth of the Big Switch, Dinesh D'Souza. He gives a great lecture on what actually happened back in the 50s and 60s with the civil rights. So there's a big perpetuating stereotype that the party switched and all the racists became Republicans. That's actually not true.
Oh no, I disagree with that. I think that there are definitely racists on both sides. I think it has
Absolutely.
more to do with
Absolutely.
race than it does with
But I
your
also want to
political
state
party.
that Obama was actually he's actually been, photographed next to a KKK member from Virginia numerous times.
And then what was
I
the
can
quote?
get you that information.
What was the quote that he said? Like they're very.
He
That's
just
how
said
you.
That's how you get ahead in the Democrat Party. Yeah, because the person in question, I don't remember I think he was a senator, and he was a very, very high-ranking member of the Democrat Party, and he was actually a member of the KKK. So, when we talk about Dixiecrats and stuff like that, there is a big myth of this big switch. And I don't want to say there's no racism on the Republican side, because that's BS. But
Right.
I do want to say that the party's switched platform is complete BS.
Oh, my issue is, I think that there are bad people on both sides. My issue is that the Republican Party seems to permit more of it. Like they don't.
I think-
like from what I'm seeing from that side, there's just not a lot of real inclination to not be racist, sexist, homophobic, etc.
So the Republican Party is also the stance of things like freedom of speech. So they may disavow comments like that, but they also won't have cancel culture come and attack them. So if people say nasty things, usually the Republican solution to that is, well, I mean, grow a thicker skin, right? If you say nasty things and stuff like that, that's a big part of cancel culture is taking down comedians and stuff like that who are making jokes about women in the kitchen and stuff like that. I've seen comedians get canceled for for saying things like that. That's ridiculous. So when the Republican Party doesn't necessarily disavow all forms of that kind of thing, much of it has to do with freedom of speech. They may say, well, we don't agree with people like that, but we're also not going to try and stop him.
I'm
Right.
not saying that they should go around arresting people. What I'm saying is the fact that they're allowing those people to continue to represent their party means that they are representing their party, and what people are going to get from their party is that they allow people who are racist, homophobic, and sexist. And so I'm not saying that that's the entire party, but what I am saying is that the fact that they are permitting that behavior gives a look on the outside that they condone it.
So let me ask you something. So Keith Ellison had a domestic violence issue that got covered up. Keith Ellison has also supported groups like Antifa publicly. He's done a lot of these things, and his domestic violence thing was very, very nasty. I mean, he beat the shit out of that woman.
That's horrible, yeah.
And he was still kept on as the DNC deputy chair. So
No, again,
people didn't disavow Keith Ellison. So it's not just on the Republican side, it's also the Democrat side.
Oh no, sure.
Yeah.
I just think that there's more of it on the Republican side, and I'm not saying that the Democrats are all that. I think that it's the best of the worst type situation.
Sure.
I mean, Democrats definitely aren't